Cold War had exploded into a deadly international showdown.
This heralded an era of nuclear paranoia, spies and double agents, much of which was played out in clandestine cloak and dagger operations. The future looked grim, and for decades Britain was deemed to be on the verge of a nuclear war. The government prepared scripts to be broadcast by the BBC from the safety of bomb-proof bunkers, and rehearsals were regularly staged to ensure both civilian and military personnel knew where to go and what to do if the sirens warned of nuclear attack.
While some of the bunkers would house hundreds and in some cases thousands of government officials, soldiers and ancillary staff, others were much more modest in scale. The one I'm about to visit here in Cornwall belonged to the Royal Observer Corps.
When these bunkers were built, they were deliberately located in remote locations, so members of the public, or indeed spies, would be unlikely to stumble upon them, so they're not exactly easy places to get to.
This is Verion, one of the hundreds of Royal Observer Corps bunkers placed all around the country.
There are just two rooms. The very smallest room of the bunker, with the L-Tex chemical toilet. Every bunker should have one.
And in here, the main room, it's tiny. I cannot imagine how difficult it must have been for the crew posted down here.
Well, it's fairly uncomfortable because these places were designed to be basic survival units. There was no heat, there was no water, there were no main services apart from a telephone line. The Air Ministry or the Observer Corps saw fit to issue us with duffel coats and said, well, that's all right, and try and keep warm. Well, this is a basic Royal Observer Corps monitoring post. It had 10 observers on it. Any 8 hours there were 3 observers operational crew, and it was their role to simply man this place and take readings to any nuclear bursts which may happen, and also record the level of radioactivity should that occur. This place, and indeed all the Royal Observer Corps posts, were never manned in earnest because we never did have a nuclear war. We played our nuclear war games, we practiced, we had nuclear exercises 4 or 5 times a year. But the idea was that had there been a tightening of the international situation and had the Royal Observer Corps been activated, then 3 observers would have come here, made it operational and served for 8 hours. If nothing happened, there would be a change of shift, another 3 observers would come on and serve another 3 hours. Had the balloon gone up when any 3 observers were on duty at any post, that would be the only crew that would ever serve, because nuclear war is totally unlike a conventional war. You would not be changing over shifts in a nuclear situation. Well, when the posts were originally built between 1955 and 1963 or 4, there were some 1,600 built. We had a big reorganisation in 1968, and many of those posts were made redundant then. The number of posts went down to roughly 875, and between 1968 and 1991 they stayed at that level, about 875, and of course it all came to an end when communism collapsed and the Royal Observer Corps was stood down in September 1991.
Foxtrot, Papa 1!
The first indication of a nuclear burst down here will be a reading on the bomb power indicator. If that needle went up, then that would be reported to the parent operation room. And then 60 seconds after that, the papers in the ground zero indicator would be changed. That would mean an observer leaving the safety of this post underground and going up top to change the papers. He would come down again with those papers. They will be assessed in terms of bearing elevation and the size of the spot in degrees, and that information will be reported to the operations room as well. If we were downwind of a burst, then we would get fallout, and that will be recorded on a device in the post called the fixed survey meter, and had we received first fallout, then thereafter readings would be taken on that meter every 5 minutes and reported to the parent ops room. And in that way, the ops room would be able to plot areas of high intensity fallout and low intensity fallout, and indeed more importantly, areas which were free of fallout. Well, thankfully, we never did have a nuclear war. And in that sense, one could argue that the Royal Observer Corps was part of a successful deterrent. And the government saw fit to disband not only squadrons and regiments, but also almost the whole of the Royal Observer Corps. And we were stood down on the 30th of September 1991. All these posts were made redundant, and many of them were sold off. Many were demolished. Some reverted to the original landowner. In this particular case, Veryan Post reverted to the National Trust. Thankfully, they didn't demolish it, and we duly took it over and restored it as part of our Royal Observer Corps heritage, and we now open it up to the public.